guys, it's Nurse J at Nursing the Truth. I hope everyone is having a great day. So this is my third video of the day. It's not going to be too long, but let's talk about Israel and Egypt. What do they really have in common? And if people really search the scriptures and or historical information like reading books, then they might find that the two is really one. So Nurse J, what do you mean? Well, if you even go back real far back into Egyptian history, they will tell you about a people called the Hyksos, the shepherd kings, or people from foreign lands that actually came into Egypt and subdued them, and they started having lots of children and overran Egypt and made them the slaves. And these foreign people became pharaohs of Egypt, not even native to the country. And you're like, well, what does this have to do with anything today? Well, my friends, it has a lot to do with a lot of things. You see, so they came in and crept in and became pharaohs and had children and got into the viziers and the priesthood and the nobility and all this other kind of stuff. And they crept in around the 12th or 13th dynasty, and then they were not kicked out into the very beginning of the 18th dynasty. Now, what happened is when the Egyptians finally got them out, they were at a place, Avaris. Okay, they ruled from Avaris. And they worship the god Set. And all this is in the computer, and you can read all this, okay? And then finally, after the Egyptians had enough, they kicked them totally out. And these people went to Canaan, which is actually Palestine, Syrian Palestine. So then Egypt became to be the powerhouse of the day, and they started ruling again and started doing things again and setting up house. This was the new kingdom, and this was the golden age for Egypt. So between those dynasties, and they went to Canaan, Tutmosis III, which is actually going to be your King David of the scriptures, he went with the god Amun and fought the same people that was kicked out of Egypt years prior. He said, are these the same rebellious people I have to deal with that came into our country, that ravaged our temples and burned it to the ground? See, you need to read your history. And he fought against these people. And so he fortified Canaan. Quote, Jerusalem. And he started putting up garrisons, fortified military garrisons, because guess what? That area was a vassal state of Egypt. So he put in place and let these kings rule that part. It's kind of like a little governor. You know how you might have a president of the United States, but you have a mayor in a little town, okay? But then the governor is the overseer of all the little mayors of each town, okay? So basically, back in the day, they didn't have as many people back then, of course, but there were kings. They were called kings or governors. And they would rule over the vassal state, and they would report to Egypt, which was over that area. So you could say that it was Egypt's land. So you're like, well, we really don't understand where this is going, and you question. Dear truth seekers, I have told you for a long time that this Bible that we have is a lot of an Egyptian book. The names are different, but there's a lot of Egyptian stuff. And you're like, well, what does it matter to you? Well, it matters a great deal, because we really need to cherry pick through the bullshit, because we've been lied to. So, when Tutmosis III made vassal states and garrisons and had military, archaeology started really ramping up in the late 1800s, and you have a lot of people digging. Well, they come across a royal seal of Hezekiah. So you're like, well, Nurse Joe, what does this have to do with anything? Well, there again, has a lot to do with it. Read your scriptures. So as we know, King Hezekiah was the son of Ahaz, which was a wicked, wicked man, they say. But, quote unquote, Hezekiah was pro-Egypt. But then you have Isaiah, which was a prophet, existed or not existed, who knows, just a piece of paper, that writes about that Hezekiah doesn't need to have anything to do with Egypt, because it's going to be their downfall and demise. Well, let's search a little bit. So King Hezekiah in the Bible, the royal seal, comes to light. And for the first time, the royal seal of King Hezekiah in the Bible was found in an archaeological excavation. The stamped clay seal, also known as a bulla, was discovered in the Ophel excavations led by Dr. Eliad Mazar at the foot of the southern wall of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. The discovery was announced in a press release by the Hebrew University of Jerusalem's Institute of Archaeology, of course, under the auspices where the excavations were done. Now, the bulla, which measured just over 1 centimeter in diameter, bears a seal impression depicting, now listen to this, the seal depicting a two-winged sun disk flanked by an ankh symbols and containing a Hebrew inscription that reads, belonging to Hezekiah, son of Ahaz, king of Judah. The bulla was discovered along with 33 other stamped bullae during a wet sifting of dirt from a refuse dump located next to the 10th century BCE royal building of the Ophel. Well, 10th century would be 900s. Now, in the book, it says that Hezekiah, son of Ahaz, and the 13th king of Judah, reigning between 715 and 686 BCE, was known for his religious reforms. and attempts to gain independence from the Assyrians. That is a question. To gain independence from Assyria, you have to understand that this little, quote, kingdom did not have enough people to fight off a gnat, much less Assyria. If you do the archaeological excavations that were talked about in the book called Bible and Earth by Israel Finkelstein, which lives in that area, the most heavily excavated area besides Egypt, they can't show for nothing. They can't find anything of the Bible, but they have found this treasure trove. I wonder why. Now, according to 2 Chronicles, Hezekiah began his reform in the first year of his reign, motivated by the belief that the ancient religion was not being practiced scrumptiously, and he ordered that the temple of Yahweh be repaired and cleansed of impurity. After celebrating a truly national Passover for the first time since the reign of Solomon. Now, Hezekiah's attempts to save Jerusalem from Assyrian King Sennacherib's invasion of 701 BCE had chronicled in both the Bible and in Assyrian accounts. According to the Bible, according to, is that really documented in anywhere else, or according to, just like according to the book of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John? Hezekiah anticipated the attack, fortified and expanded the city walls, and built a tunnel, known today as Hezekiah's Tunnel, to ensure that the besieged city could still receive water. Now, Hezekiah was trapped in Jerusalem like a bird in a cage, according to the Bible. However, Sennacherib ultimately failed. Now let's listen to me. Failed to capture Jerusalem before his death in 2 Kings 19:35 through 37. Although seal impressions bearing King Hezekiah's name have already been known from the antiquities since the middle of the 90s, some with a winged scarab symbol and others with the winged sun, this is the first time that a seal impression of an Israelite or Judean king has ever come to light in a scientific archaeological excavation, says the Hebrew University. Now this is the thing. A little bitty town of Judah, not very many people, subdued and fortified the little area, and pretty much, quote unquote, held off the Assyrians, which Sennacherib ultimately failed to capture before his death. He failed. Okay. So, let's do this. So let's look at what the word vassal state means. Okay. And I'm doing this in real time. And we're going Let's see what this means. So, a vassal state is a state with varying degrees of independence in its internal affairs, but dominated by another state in its foreign affairs and potentially wholly subject to the dominating state. Let's read that again. A vassal state is a state with varying degrees of independence in its internal affairs, but dominated by another state in its foreign affairs and potentially wholly subject to the dominating state. Okay. So you're like, so what's wrong with this? Well, during the time of King Hezekiah's reign, Judah was a vassal state of Egypt. They answered, my brothers, my sisters, to Egypt. Egypt allowed them to be there and watch over their part of the province. But they had to answer to the pharaohs. You see, it all started with Tutmosis III, my true seekers. He came in. He set kings in place. Said, I will protect you, whatever you need. I'm sending my military. I'm building your fortified city. And I'm putting garrisons here for you. And these people that they kicked out, the Hyksos, was in Canaan. And they had a kick-ass day with them in the fighting. Now this is historical information. And they subdued it. And had a lot of Egyptians there in Canaan. Now this is where you get your Akhenaten story. And so time went on. And as it got that far down into the 600s BCE, you had King Hezekiah that was in line with the Pharaoh. His seal, which is an Egyptian seal, was sealed to the Pharaoh. These Bible writers were liars. And they had to put words in this Isaiah character. Because, see, the book of Isaiah actually was written by 3 different people. Go check that out. Do your research. It wasn't written by one man, dear truth seekers. Broken up in several time frames. So, it makes Egypt look like the bad dude, you see. That this big ass Yahweh is saying, oh, don't ask nothing of Egypt. Their chariots, their horses are flesh, not of spirit, because Yahweh's going to fly and save the day. Do your research. It's quite comical. Now, in your Bible, it says that Hezekiah gives tribute to Egypt. Now, dear true seekers, if this Judea, the kingdom of David, if they were so big and so powerful, then why in the scriptures is it saying that Hezekiah gives tribute to Egypt? That's money. So what happens is, in all of the provinces, they gave money to Egypt. Just like today, Louisiana, right? We pay state taxes, right? Each household pays state taxes and it goes to certain things of the state. Same thing. So when you have Egypt and you have Judea over here, which, by the way, is in the northeast African horn, dear truth seekers, it's in Africa. Israel is in Africa. So, Hezekiah paid tribute to Egypt. So, whoever pays money to has to listen to. All of this basically is the lies of the Bible, making it look like they were a bad state. When honestly, the whole single time this ever happened, the great country of Egypt ruled that area. And when Assyria came, there was just not enough people to fight. And if you look at your historical information, my friends, Assyria came and fought, came to Thebes. Okay, came to Thebes, burned Thebes, took away the gold doors from the temples, and ravaged the place. And they wrote about it, and so did the Assyrians, laughed and joked about it, pillaging Egypt. That's why Assyria took over Jerusalem. That was in the Egyptian province. But they want you to believe that it was just a one vassal state, that it was theirs. I challenge you to look into this, because I've done my homework, truth seekers. And then when Egypt got it back, oh, now we're messing with Babylon. And the story goes, the Battle of Carchemish, the Egyptians, their vassal state in Judea. And that's when King Josiah gets killed by the Pharaoh of Egypt. And he says, my brother, I have no problem with you. I have to get to the other side. The Babylonians are coming. They make it look like Egypt was the evil one and killing Israel. And they've been demonized ever since. But the Pharaoh says, brother, I have no problem with you. Read it. It's in your scriptures. You see, Egypt knew that Babylon was coming. Egypt knew Babylon was coming. And they had to get their army there. Well, Babylon just beat them at the Battle of Carchemish. Now, they tried to come into Egypt alone, and Egypt wasn't having it. So Babylon didn't actually get into Egypt, but they did get into the vassal state of Egypt, which was Jerusalem. So the lie has to stop, and it has to stop here. And so they were taken from the vassal state of Egypt, that was Jerusalem, and taken off into exile. You had a lot of people in the exile. You didn't have only Syrians and Canaanites, you had Egyptians too. Because I told you, a lot of the Egyptians that fled with Akhenaten went to Jerusalem. So my truth seekers, the games have to stop. And when all of these countries started taking over, as in Assyria, Babylon, Persia, right? Greek, Rome, France, Great Britain. You have to do your homework. You have to read. Ever since Moses III, it's been in Egypt's hands. So therefore I challenge you, do your research. Hezekiah was for Egypt. He was pro-Egypt. But in the scriptures it makes it look like Yahweh decimated them because he was pro-Egypt. But you see, the writers didn't like Egypt because they were there and they didn't like answering to them. So what do you do to a people or a country that you don't like? You write bad things about them, right? So until next time, Hotep and Ashe, and we will see you with the next video shortly. Have a great day.